Retrobotics.
Welcome to Retrobotics.
New game.
Yeah.
Although we didn't actually just pick this one up. We actually picked this one up a long time ago.
Yeah, in a galaxy far, far away.
We did a lot of work on it, as you can tell. But we didn't make videos about it because it's lazy. And I didn't think about it a lot of times. I was like, I'm just going to go tinker on something in the workshop. And then no video ever came out. But lots of pictures, though, and those will show up later in the video.
And you cataloged it on K-Loft.
Yeah, there's a 100-something post thread about bringing this thing back from the dead, and oh, how dead it was.
Oh my goodness.
So, why Joust? Why this machine? So, my dad, he was actually a jouster himself, professionally, for a while. He was a stuntman and a certified fight instructor for Hollywood. So he would do this joust and sword fights and everything else that was required of the movies. But when he and his brother were a kid, this is the game that they played when they were kids. It's the only one that they were ever mentioned to me that they played was Joust. So I really wanted to track one down. And these things can be quite expensive. This one ended up being quite expensive, but it didn't start that way.
No.
So we actually saw an advertisement way back.
Yeah, so we got this game August 2022.
Yeah.
And now it is April 2023. So we saw it from, what's his face?
Wayne. It was a Facebook ad
Facebook ad.
for a local games reseller dealer.
And we've gotten other things from Wayne before.
Yeah.
And he's not too far from us, so it's a pretty close drive. But
it had been converted to a champion baseball at one point. There was very little left of the original Joust. The only things I can think of were obviously the cabinet, and the bezel was there, and the original power brick in the bottom of the cabinet, but everything else was gone. Wiring harness gone.
Yeah. Well, no, and then the thing was that, wasn't it like $200?
Yeah.
And so in our brains, we're like, okay, we're going to get this game, it's converted into something else, it's $200. We're going to sell the insides of the other game and try to make some of that
back.
back.
There was a champion baseball in it at the time.
And then we get there, and the guy had already ripped out everything else, like in the ad.
Because he knew we were wanting the Joust cabinet.
We had, told him our list of games we were interested in.
We had said we were going to buy it as is.
Yeah, we were like, oh, we'll buy it as is. And then he took it out. So that was, we probably should have negotiated it lower after that. But, because again, it was, painted over black on the sides. It had a sticker for the baseball game. And so we actually had to peel that off. And originally we looked at it and we're like, okay, hopefully we can strip this paint and we'll have, beautiful Joust side, which is what we ended up successfully doing on Robotron, but this was our first time ever doing it. So we were trying Citrus Strip for the first time.
This is our first attempt at a deconversion, this game.
Yeah.
And it took this long to do. It was
took
our first
so long.
attempt at a deconversion, but it was not our first successful deconversion, just because of how much was wrong with this particular machine.
Well, and I think it intimidated us because, we're both robotics people, and so fixing the electrical stuff and some of the hardware is a little bit more, within our wheelhouse, right? A capacitor kit is very relaxing to do. You're really good with monitors now, right? Like a flyback, we can do all that. That felt like when we were learning those skills, they were easy steps for us to learn.
Oh yeah, that is the original monitor also.
It is,
that is in there. That is the matching serial number monitor.
But I think for us, realizing that the art was trash, because when we tried to do the Citrus Strip, we just made it worse. We read all these forums, and we're like, okay, we're gonna do this. We had read that Citrus Strip was supposed to smell citrusy. It's so horrible. We were not really, we started doing it in this shop, and then we realized we should take it out to the garage. But it just kept pulling back more and more paint. So we realized we had screwed it up
beyond
repair. And then it got to the point where we're like, neither of us are, very artistic. And then we're kind of like, how are we actually going to restore it so the art looks fantastic? And
for a while, we waffled on whether or not we would even turn it back into a Joust, because we had started to get into the reality of, okay, parts are expensive.
Yeah.
We don't have any of the stuff that goes. We don't even have a harness.
Nothing.
And we were like, well, maybe we'll turn it into a cabinet for aliens. Maybe we'll turn it into a cabinet for this. Maybe we'll put some custom art onto it because currently it's got nothing.
Well, and then we were almost gonna get the Joust cocktail.
Yeah.
Because we were killing ourselves in the fall with university because Liam was trying to graduate with his master's and I was trying to do my qualification exams and my preliminary exams for my PhD, which I would never suggest for someone to do so close together. But so we were dying, and so we're like, oh, we're gonna reward ourselves with a Joust cocktail as like a motivator. We like printed out photos of it.
Because this one had been for sale for a long time, months. And naturally, we completed all of our objectives, and the day before we finished everything, it sold.
I know. We like submitted journal papers. We were like working literal, 80-hour weeks, and then it sold. And then so we're like, okay, now we have to actually restore this because, we really do want to Joust.
And so I graduated because that was one of the things that needed to be done. And then I started going into, okay, what needs to happen to bring this back? So I posted a big want to buy on K-Log. Basically, want to buy everything Joust. I want a PCB, I want a power supply, I want a marquee, I need a harness, I need stencils, I need a control panel overlay because the one that was on there, it was there, but it was painted black and completely shot. It was not repairable. Besides, had holes drilled into it for champion baseball or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So slowly started buying things. I acquired I think it was the controls we got first. Yeah. And then we got a hold of the complete board set. And I got a broken power supply from Quarter Arcade. And then some cap kits and things from APAR. And we had Charles Clay make us a harness.
And his wife.
And his wife. His wife actually made us this particular harness. And we got a original marquee, also on K-Love. But then the wait came because we were planning on stenciling it, but we ordered stencils from This Old Game, which as people who ordered from This Old Game would know, can take quite a while because they put them all into a wait list. We also ordered the CPO from This Old Game, and it does look beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
So the problem stems from, we'd never done this before, so I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So we found some codes for Valspar paint, wall paint, latex paint for Joust, color codes.
So you asked?
Yeah, asked Kel. So I tried rolling paint onto this. It sucked, and we'll show you a picture of that. I sanded it perfectly smooth. I primed it. I put on the roll-on paint, and it looked trash.
You spent so many hours.
so many hours. And it was terrible. And then I tried to fix it, and it never got fixed.
He would literally, he primed it, he did everything, he painted it, and then he's like, not good enough, Sam. Paint, not good enough. Just more and more paint, and I was like,
I went through a
gallon.
Gallon of paint. A gallon.
Yeah.
Just on the brown. And then decided, no, it's not going to happen. It has to be oiled. That's the way it was done from the Williams factory. Yeah. Oil-based paints. HVLP setup, high volume, low pressure.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So like, in addition, we're trying to work on these machines within a certain budget, and it's kind of like, but one thing that we really like doing is buying tools that you're going to use on a project, and then you now have forever. So, for example, like we had a small compressor, but if you're doing the HVLP, you need a very large compressor, and we just happened to get one at a discount at Lowe's because the box was broken. So that was nice. And then you were able to find, like, basically people on K-Love were so nice and helpful, and they were just like, oh, go to Harbor Freight and get
this $15
exactly.
high volume, low pressure gun. And I got a whole bunch of other pneumatic equipment from Harbor Freight to make it happen as well. We got paint filters from Harbor Freight. We got all the pipe fittings from Harbor Freight, the air hoses from Harbor Freight. Basically, everything that we needed to do this, we got the compressor from Lowe's, we got all the HVLP stuff from Harbor Freight, and we got the paint from Sherwin-Williams with paint codes as well. So I sanded the cabinet down to bare wood again, and then put gray. We converted our whole garage into a paint booth. I covered the walls in plastic. I covered the ceiling in plastic. I even made it so that the garage door could open and fold the plastic up over it as it was opening up. To try to make sure nothing gets anywhere.
The most wonderful Dexter crime scene.
And now it's a mess. because it's covered in paint. But we primed it and then waited for the stencils. When the stencils finally came in, it was time to paint. And we'll go over that more in a bit, because I made just about every mistake possible, and it will be in the Kalov thread where I've discussed all of the mistakes that I made.
You have like a little album of all the mistakes.
So that you will not make those same mistakes if you follow in my footsteps. But once it was painted and ready to come inside, it actually didn't take all that long to put together, because we had been accruing all the parts. It really, I went from 6 o'clock last night to 8-ish, and it was put together, and that's when it started working.
Yeah.
So the only issues we had was I needed to repair the power supply. I repaired that weeks ago. Needed a whole bunch of new capacitors because a couple were blown and a few were missing. So it's actually in great shape.
Yeah.
And just put everything back into the cabinet. I repaired the monitor at some point in the past too.
Don't forget the marquee light. But...
Yeah, the marquee light is still out, and that is because the ballast transformer there on this side is bad. I didn't realize that until I plugged in the marquee light and it blew the fuse in the power brick. And I don't have another one of those on hand, so they're going to have to be ordered out. But I don't think it'll be that hard of a fix. So hopefully it'll all be nice.
Exactly. No, it's awesome to finally see it actually done. Just having it in the garage for so many, because like, so this workshop we have the games that we're working on, or like they're almost there. Hopefully, maybe cross fingers.
Except this one.
Yeah, except our space
and
shuttle.
Progress is being made here too, but that'll come in a different video.
But this one was just jettisoned out in the garage. Like every time I went, drove to work, it was like, oh, poor Joust.
A position currently being occupied by our Smash TV.
Exactly. But it is really, I think, fulfilling to take a cabinet that has been completely converted, completely lost all of its original.
Yeah, this is the most trashed cabinet that we've ever picked up, and now it's probably one of our nicest cabinets.
Yeah, I mean, you did such a great job, honey. It is gorgeous.
So why don't we take you guys on a tour of the cabinet?
Exactly.
So I figure if we're giving a tour of the cabinet, we'll start with one of the sides. Both are pretty much the same in that they have relatively the same frequency of screw-ups that I've made in doing this. Every layer I found a new way to screw up, so I'll walk you through some of those and sort of how this process goes. We used oil-based paints doing this. It's just what Williams used, and this is my first attempt at oil-based paints. Actually, my first attempt at stenciling anything. So it took a little bit of trial and error. So we actually did 2 coats for the brown paint after we'd sanded it down. We sanded it down flush after the incident with the latex-based wall paint. And then I used Krylon Gray color primer, sort of a neutral. I wanted to avoid any kind of bleed-through. Little I know this brown paint was going to be very, very solid. And after 1 coat, it was completely invisible. I only did the 2nd coat to try to get it even smoother than it was previously. So after that, you can see the first brown coat. My biggest mistake was overspray. I had some segments where the paint sort of dripped down, which was less than ideal. The next coat was the cream, which was characterized for me by overspray, since I didn't do such a great job of sealing some of the little cracks where you can see paint leaked out. There is a way to prevent this, and the way to prevent that leakage is to take the color that the stencil is being placed on top of and take a little paintbrush, and as you've got the stencil on, paint along the edges of the stencil with the base color to lock in the stencil. So then when you spray it on, any paint leakage will be the same color and then very difficult to notice. Something I did employ with the cream color, but I tried to do a much neater job of it with the yellow. I succeeded with the yellow for the most part. There are a few small areas where I screwed up, but for the most part it was better. And red was, I think, the best color. We only had a few oversprays. I think this is the only major one on the Williams logo there. And obviously these could be fixed, but I'm just gonna say it's probably good. The other mistake I made, this was on the yellow layer actually, is when we were peeling off the stencil, a piece of it fell and touched the lance. So I had to make a tiny little stencil out of masking tape and repaint the lance to cover that up so it didn't look bad. But as you can tell, it's invisible. So I think I won there. The biggest error in this is given our cabinet a namesake. And that error is, when we got the stencils from this whole game and I put them up on here, all the cutouts, the actual stencils, were removed. I figured this was going to be the case for everything that needed to be put on there, but it was not. The ostrich in Joust is supposed to have a talon here. It was not there. It was cut in the stencil we got from this old game, but it was not removed. And I didn't notice it until I was peeling off the stencil. I was like, what is this little blue thing like left here? What is this? Why did it fall off? And I realized it was not supposed to be there, and that was where the ankle should be. So we're calling this cabinet, and by extension this rider's mount, Achilles. And we're just going to chalk this up to patina because I think it's just going to be too much effort to fix. And if I didn't just point it out to you, nobody would notice. At least I hope not. So now let's go around to the front of the cabinet and talk about some of the things in the front here. A lot of work went on. The only original unmodified thing here is the bezel. And you can see that the bezel is probably the biggest source of quote-unquote patina in this machine, with lots of wrinkles and deformations and sort of missing paints, and they blacked out the instruction card. But we have it, so I'm gonna keep it. Like, everything else was completely shot and needed replacing, but we're gonna keep the bezel, at least for the time being. The marquee is original. We got that from a K-lover. And the coin doors, I did not do anything to this one. I barely even touched it up or anything. Let's see if it'll even open. There we go. There's a lot of spare wires and things hanging around in here. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure what was going on there. I assume when it got jamified that these were some of the things that were done by the operator to help it work. But all the original Williams connections, including the service buttons, are still intact, and the wiring was still intact, the original connectors, so it integrated just fine into the harness we got for it. I did repaint this lower door and get it to be nice. It has the original sticker in it, which was cool to find. It was along with the coin door. I also sanded and repainted the entire front of the cabinet because when we got it, it was pretty severely water damaged. So overall, I feel like it turned out very nice. The control panel here is original. However, we have a new overlay on it from this old game. The controls are also original. We got them from another K-lover, Firehawk. Same person who sold us the board set for the machine. So the harness, the controls are all original. I did a much better job, I think, putting this control panel overlay on Joust than I did for Robotron, seeing as I hadn't done it before I tried Robotron. So I'm much happier with how this one came out. Robotron was very wrinkled in its application, but this is pretty much flawless, and it's gorgeous considering that this old game managed to get all the halftones in Joust absolutely perfect. I've also heard in some games that the speaker grill is sort of punched out or punched in or whatnot, but this is the original grill and looked quite nice, so I actually just gave it a little bit of a spray and left it in there. So other than that, the front of the cabinet looks pretty good. Oh yeah, new T-molding, but you know, whatever. So let's move on to the back of the cabinet and the internals. So when we got the machine, the only things that we had were the original power supply, which had burnt connectors. I don't know if I still have that original connector lying around somewhere where it had been toasted to smithereens. Now here's a chunk of it. You can see it got roasted. I'll put a picture of it in the video. But we used a dual wire mod kit from Charles Klein to repair the power supply cable that fed into here. I got this power supply unit with the heatsink from Quarter Arcade. It needed quite a bit of repair. It was missing capacitors, but first try! After putting everything back in, it worked. So I was pleased with that. Also got the back planes from them. The board set came from Firehawk on K-Love, and this wiring harness, beautiful wiring harness, can't you tell? It uses all the original wiring colors, was done by Charles Klein's wife on K-Love, which we really appreciate her efforts, because this is awesome. And it fit perfectly. In the cabinet, a lot of the original wiring grommets remained. These ones did not, I put those in, but most of the ones inside the cabinet were there. The original monitor was there, had to repair that, so it ended up being nice, but I'm honestly just so glad that we were able to get a complete set of internals and that it all matched up and lined up and everything is looking exactly like it should in the manual. So honestly, happy it's put together, so let's get to some gameplay.
Let's play.
So one trick to Joust, you can stand on this platform up here and prevent the knights from spawning. Oh, that's so cool.
I'm sorry! That is an accident!
Out of left field, KO! You're dangerous flying around up there. Oh my God, don't kill me again.
Wait, I'm almost gonna beat you! Just die! I'll finally win a game! Ooh, ooh.
Not because you murdered me in cold
That
blood,
wasn't on
when there were
purpose.
no enemies on the screen.
That wasn't on purpose. Ah, no! No!
Bonus features for those who like a real little bit of absolute nerdom. I fucking love Williams cabinets. Let me tell you why I love Williams cabinets. One, they're made of actual wood instead of things that disintegrate when you present them with the idea of moisture. They're solid, they last. Two, they're very easy to maintain. I mean, look at this. It's got a nice door on which the circuit board hangs, and you can easily access it. Just open the door, and you can probe away to your heart's content. And this doesn't even have a lock because it's dependent on the second door. So when you need to just access the monitor and you're not really worried about the circuit board, just open this door. This door stays shut, it's latched into place, and you can work to your heart's content on the monitor. Now about that monitor, there's a really interesting feature in Williams cabinets, which is they have 2 bolts here. You pull those bolts, this monitor shelf slides back and locks into place because they thought of that. And then there's a mirror up here. So you can use that to adjust the monitor. You don't have to call your wife or your other significant other to stand there with a smartphone or a mirror or tell you, good, no, the other way, not as good. It's a couples exercise, but this is so much better. Atari, shame on you. Why didn't you do this? You had so many opportunities as market leader to come up with a cabinet that was easy to maintain, easy to look at things, make sure everything was good. Instead, you come up with something with a 3-board stack stuck in a metal cage that you have to pull out and put on a table if you want to actually look at it. I mean, look at this. They made all their games on that. Joust, Robotron, Stargate, Sinistar, all ran on that hardware. Easy to swap, just swap the ROM board. It's perfect. Okay? I want more Williams cabinets. I don't even need the Williams games in them. Any generic game that we have, Aliens, Gate of Doom maybe, Tetris, I want to put that in the Williams cabinet. Now that we have these, we have 2 of them, we have Joust and Robotron, and we want to pick up a Sinistar and Moon Patrol at some point, I want more. If I can track down more converted Joust and Robotron cabinets and then put our generic games in them, I will. Because these cabinets are the best.